Look, I'm not going to say it's the best Crunchwrap on here, but Doritos Locos. Hi everybody, I'm Graham. Today we're making the Doritos Locos Crunchwrap, and we got a lot to do, so we're pretty much going to get into it. But before we do, let's go over it real quick. We're going to be making flour tortillas, queso, seasoned beef, Doritos Locos Tostadas, a little Chipotle lime crema, and of course some fresh vegetables go in it as well. Let's get started. Since you need fully cooled corn tortillas to make tostadas, I went ahead and did those first. So I took a couple Guajillo chilies, toasted them up in a pan, and then blended them up with 1 cup of water until smooth. These are going to add a little bit of a smoky flavor, but mostly they're just so I can try to make my tostadas that artificial orange color that Doritos Locos Tacos are known for. Then I strained out all the excess pulp and the seeds through a fine mesh strainer and mixed the liquid up with 1 teaspoon of salt and a cup of masa harina. Then I mixed that up and kneaded it until it became a soft dough that didn't fall apart and crumble. Then I set that aside to rest for about half an hour, divided into 12 equalish pieces, and rolled them into balls. Then I squished those into a 5 to 6 inch corn tortilla, cooked them in a pan on medium-high heat, and tossed them in the fridge to cool for later. I also whipped up a flour tortilla dough at the same time since it needed to rest as well, but before letting it rest, I added about 2 teaspoons of the Dorito dust that I'm going to get to in just a minute into a portion the size of 2 tortillas. Then I cut that into a piece roughly 2/3 and 1/3. While that was all resting, I started cooking my beef. Now of course you could just use a packet of taco seasoning for this, but of course I went ahead and made my own, using half a tablespoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of oregano, 1 tablespoon of paprika, half a tablespoon of cumin, about a teaspoon of salt, and a few cracks of black pepper. While that's sitting doing its thing, I went ahead and started my queso. Now I would have loved for this to be orange, but I forgot to pick up some cheddar, so instead I'm just going to be using the white cheddar powder that I picked up for the Dorito dust. It's not going to have the same look, but it's still going to taste delicious. To a pan, I'll add a little bit of butter and flour and cook that out. Then little by little, I'll add milk and incorporate until I get the consistency that I want. Then I added about a tablespoon of white cheddar powder, a little sprinkle of Ancho chili powder, and of course some salt and pepper. Alright, now let's talk Dorito dust. This actually ended up tasting almost exactly like the nacho cheese that gets stuck to your fingers while you're eating Doritos, and I was super stoked on it, but it does require one special ingredient that can be a little bit tricky to find, and if you can't get it, it's still going to turn out fine. Now I actually went ahead and made my own by taking a few tomatoes, laying them out on a wire rack, sticking them in the oven at 170 degrees Fahrenheit to dehydrate for a few hours, tossing them in a bag in a freezer to turn brittle, and grinding them up in a blender. Then to a blender I added 1 teaspoon of my tomato powder, half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, a teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, half a tablespoon of chili powder, 2 tablespoons of white cheddar powder, and 2 tablespoons of processed grated Parmesan cheese. Oh, and just a pinch of MSG. Then I just blended that into a fine dust. With that ready, it was time to start frying our tostadas. So to a small pan, I added just enough oil to submerge my corn tortillas and let it come up to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then one at a time, I fried my cold corn tortillas until crispy and the oil was basically no longer bubbling. Then I let them drip off and transferred them to a wire rack. And then, while still hot and greasy, dusted them generously with my Dorito dust on both sides. With all that stuff ready, it was time to start building my Crunchwrap. So I took my oversized Doritos Locos flour tortilla, added a generous helping of my white queso, and of course some seasoned beef. Then I topped that with some mozzarella cheese because I think cheddar gets too greasy, and my Doritos Locos tostada. Next I would have put iceberg lettuce, but I decided instead to make a Napa cabbage salad with a little cilantro, lime juice, and oil. I find that Napa cabbage stands up a little better to heat than iceberg does. After that, I added my tomatoes, which I seasoned with some salt and pepper, and a generous helping of a Chipotle lime crema that I made, using 2 parts sour cream, 1 part mayonnaise, a big old squeeze of lime, and some of the adobo sauce from a can of Chipotle's. Then I topped that off with my small tortilla, folded it carefully around the edges, and then transferred all that to a pan preheated on medium heat, where I placed it seam side down to seal everything in. Then I flipped it, toasted on the other side, and cracked that crunchy bad boy open. I'm not gonna lie, this one came out way better than I expected it to. The Doritos powder really comes through in both the flour tortilla and the tostada, and that beef is absolutely perfect. Alright, that's it for this one. I had a lot of fun with this one. If you guys did enjoy this too, be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and consider hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the other stuff I'm making in my kitchen. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.